My fiancé left me a note. I found someone better. I said nothing and karma struck. 6 months ago, everything changed overnight. I'm 36 years old and work as a civil engineer at a mid-sized company. Until recently, I was engaged to Andrea, 31 years old. We had been together for 4 years and 3 of them living in my house. I bought that apartment after my father's passing, who left me enough for the down payment on a 3-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't luxurious, but the mortgage was comfortable and the yard was big enough for the dog I always wanted. Although Andrea claimed to be allergic, my parents, my father a factory worker and my mother a school secretary, sacrificed themselves so I could study engineering. He always drove a Chevy Silverado 89 and taught me how to change oil when I was 12. Today I drive a Tacoma 2010 that I bought secondhand with 50,000 miles. Andrea was never satisfied. For her, my truck was too modest and unprofessional for client meetings. I refused to go into debt for an image. And when my father passed from a heart attack 5 years ago, I promised myself to take advantage of the opportunity he gave me. Andrea works in pharmaceutical sales and earns about $85,000 plus commissions. With that income, we lived comfortably, although we weren't wealthy. We planned to get married next summer. We had already deposited $4,000. Her parents covered the rest, and everyone seemed excited until the small disagreements started to multiply. Everything changed 6 months ago. First, it was dinners with her clients, increasingly frequent, and her arrivals home smelling of someone else's cologne. And saying goodbye, I always found receipts from expensive restaurants, and when I pointed it out, she claimed I was controlling with money. And I saw how my great friend from school, Joseph, started canceling our basketball games week after week and avoided looking me in the eyes. I didn't understand why. The trigger was my birthday last month. I took the day off to stay home with Max, my one-eyed orange cat that I adopted 3 years ago. In the morning, Andrea handed me a package wrapped in dark paper. "Don't open it until tonight," she said, kissing me on the cheek. "I have dinner with the regional director, but I'll be back at 10 and we'll celebrate." I left it pending. Around 8, with Max purring in my lap, I opened the gift. It was a black hoodie with the logo of our favorite band. In a pocket, I discovered a folded note. It wasn't a receipt, but her goodbye. It said something like, "Victor, I can't continue like this. The wedding, the house, and everything we dreamed of is no longer what I desire. I found someone who makes me feel alive again. By the time you read this, I will have already taken just what's necessary. I'll pick up the rest later. I'm sorry it ends like this." I stayed looking at that paper for minutes, reconstructing in my mind every sign I had overlooked. The long nights, the unexpected work trips, her excessive care of her phone, and the absurd fights over nonsense. Once we argued for an hour because I bought brand name cereal instead of the organic one she preferred. I decided to check our cloud account. Andrea wasn't tech savvy and didn't realize that the photos from her phone synced automatically. I found dozens of images of her with a tall, muscular man dressed in an expensive suit, at restaurants, at a cabin. The dates revealed that everything had been happening for at least 4 months. And in a folder called Weekend Getaway appeared the front of my car, the same car I left for her occasional use. I explored her message backups and found repulsive conversations. Andrea was mocking me. She described me as boring and talked about starting her real life with this guy Dorian, a doctor at the hospital where she had clients. Just then my phone rang. It was Joseph. "Dude, we need to talk. It's urgent." I called him instantly. "What's going on?" And he told me he had been seeing them together at the cafeteria for 3 months, and that last month he caught them kissing in the parking lot. Dorian warned him that if Joseph said anything, she would file a complaint and he would lose his job. Joseph wanted to tell me without drama, but didn't know how. My God, what am I going to do? I kept repeating without a solution in sight. The next day, I took the first step. I called my father's old friend, who is now my insurance agent, and told him everything. I canceled the wedding insurance policy as soon as I finished talking. He sighed and with a grave voice warned me, "Son, I'm going to have to talk to your Uncle Paul. Are you interested in knowing this?" 2 hours later, Uncle Paul was on my porch holding a 6-pack of beers, your old man's favorite drink. "We have to toast," he said while offering me a can. "A broken engagement hurts, but a failed marriage hurts more." We stayed silent for a while. "Your father would have acted the same as you," he finally added. For me, that comment was the greatest compliment, an invitation to maintain dignity and a cool head. I decided to take a week off to organize myself. First, I changed all the locks in the house, and I reviewed our finances. The joint account had about $12,000, most of it from my recent bonus. I transferred the total to my personal account. The next day, I called the event venue and the photographer, explained the situation, and asked that the deposits remain exclusively in my name. The manager, Diane, was understanding and agreed without problems. Meanwhile, I prepared a folder with screenshots of all the messages and photographs I had discovered, rigorously organized by date. I still didn't know how I would use that information, but it was important to have evidence. Every night of that week, I stayed awake until 2 or 3 in the morning investigating. I reviewed the hospital staff listings until I found Dorian's profile. Chief of Neurosurgery, Harbormet, impeccable in his career. I made a spreadsheet to cross-reference the hours of his surgeries with Andrea's nightly meetings. I found his LinkedIn and observed strange gaps in his work history. I accessed Andrea's Instagram from the iPad we shared and documented every interaction with him in the last 6 months. On the 4th day, Andrea called to ask about her things. "We need to talk," she began with a forced voice. "I'll close as soon as possible," I told her. "Tomorrow I'll come by at 6 to pick everything up." When I reminded her I had changed the locks, she let out an insecure laugh. "That house is half yours," she replied. I laughed. "Your name doesn't appear on either the deed or the mortgage. You've never paid a tax or insurance. Tell me then, which half is yours?" She tried to defend herself with the engagement. "We were engaged, in past tense," I replied, "just like your promises." She remained silent, proving me right. The next morning my phone rang. It was Thomas Whitfield, Andrea's lawyer. He informed me that she would come escorted by authorities to collect her belongings and that I would soon receive news about the house situation. I kept calm and told him, before threatening, "Inform yourself about the cloud account I shared with my father. I have folders with photos from Laxadrin in March and the family cabin in April. I can show them to Miss Whitfield if necessary." He didn't respond again. An hour later, Andrea wrote, "You're in jerk. What time can I come by for my things?" We arranged for the following Saturday. She arrived accompanied by Clara, her younger sister, who wisely chose not to bring Dorian. I spent the morning packing everything in black bags and cardboard boxes. I was on the entrance step with Max on my lap, not looking in her direction. Clara, always serene and genuine, everything opposite to Andrea, helped me load the boxes into her Range Rover. "I'm sorry about all this," she murmured. I replied, "It's not your fault." She stopped thoughtfully and added, "I think she's making a huge mistake. Dorian has ruined relationships before." She told me the story about the nurse. He left her for Andrea and abandoned her after 3 months. "Don't tell Andrea anything. For her, this is an epic love story. Your secret is safe with me." That night, Clara called. "Victor, my best friend. Andrea took things that don't belong to her. I saw in her backpack the signed glove your father left you and your grandfather's watch. She told me she shouldn't have left with the engagement ring. It was worth $6,000 and was practically all my savings." I sat in my father's recliner, the same one Andrea hated, and thought about my next move. The theft of family objects was the last straw. I had to investigate Dorian more. The next day, I met with Joseph at a restaurant far from the hospital. "His name is Dorian Chamberlain," he explained while serving me coffee. "Neurosurgeon, 40-something years old, about $800,000 annual salary, 2 separations. Drives a custom Maserati, a complete rich and important package." "Does he have a bad reputation?" I asked. "He has complaints about his treatment of patients and nurses and rumors of irregular medication. Some pharmaceuticals disappear from his cabinets under the radar." There was also a nurse, Stephanie, who dated him. When they broke up, she was transferred from emergency. She says he manipulated her, accused her of infidelity, and threatened to ruin her career if she talked. That was a lead. I located Stephanie in the hospital directory and after several shifts approached her. She described how Dorian pursued her during his engagement, promising to leave his fiancée. He did it 3 months later, but soon started behaving with jealousy and control. When she found pills in her locker, he threatened her. "He's a narcissist and possible substance abuser," Stephanie concluded. Protected by his father on the hospital board, he repeats the pattern: hooks, destroys, and leaves behind. "How do I hit him where it hurts most?" I asked. "In his reputation." She replied while getting up. "Good luck, and don't try to warn her. Let her learn the hard way." When Stephanie left, my phone vibrated. A message from Thomas. "See you tomorrow at 2 p.m. at the Riverfront Cafe." I arrived at the Riverfront 15 minutes before the appointment and settled at a corner table with my back against the wall and good visibility of the entire room. Andrea had told me, "Come alone. My father wants to see you." This was going to be interesting, and boy was it. When Thomas Whitfield appeared, he transmitted exactly the presence of a corporate lawyer with millionaire income. Impeccable suit, perfectly combed silver hair, and that confidence that intimidates before speaking. Seeing me seated, he stopped for a second, took a deep breath, and approached without losing an ounce of confidence. "I want to talk about your evidence and how to resolve this amicably," he said without beating around the bush. He took out some documents and screenshots. Photos of your woman deceiving you for months. Messages where she plans to leave you without drama. Snapshots at your family's cabin. I felt a chill hearing about the cabin. He waited for me to absorb everything and cleared his throat, looking around to make sure no one was spying on us. "What do you want exactly?" I replied calmly. "A signed baseball glove from my father, my grandfather's watch that she took when she moved into the house, and the $4,000 from the wedding deposits that came out of my account." Thomas nodded. "By Friday, you'll have your things." He turned to leave, but stopped before exiting. "By the way, I don't approve of the way she's used you. My wife and I raised her better." He turned his back and left. A few seconds later, I heard his voice as I turned toward the door. "One more thing. If anything else of mine disappears, I'll send those photos to your wife, your partners, and whoever necessary." February, just as he promised. 3 days later, a messenger left a package at my office with the glove, a watch, and a cashier's check for $4,000. No note came with it, but I didn't expect one. A day later, I received a message from Clara. Can we meet? It's important. We met at a quiet downtown bar. Upon entering, I saw her anxious, fidgeting with the edge of her glass. I sat across from her and asked, "What's happening?" "Andrea doesn't know I'm here." "Right." Clara shook her head and quietly told everything. "It's a disaster. It's no longer my problem." But Dorian shows his true face. Controlling, jealous, checks her phone, interrogates her about any man who calls her attention. "Last week," she whispered, "he caught her arriving late to what was supposed to be a work dinner." Her comment surprised me. "And how does all that affect you?" She sighed. "She's thinking about quitting her job because he hates that she works with male doctors. He wants her to leave her career for him. She made a huge mistake, and she's too proud to admit it. Remember that note she left in your birthday gift? She only had the courage to write it. She couldn't tell you in person." She hesitated and added, "I'm telling you this because I know you truly cared, not like Dorian, who sees her as a trophy. I always thought you deserved something better." I thanked her concern with restraint. "Thank you. I'm really moving forward. I feel good." "I know," she replied quickly, looking away. "I just wanted you to know." As we finished our drinks, I couldn't help but wonder if her gesture was pure solidarity or if there was something more. In any case, I now had allies. Thomas on one side, Clara, who was now part of Andrea's inner circle, plus Joseph and Stephanie, who knew the ins and outs of the hospital and Dorian's practice. With patience, now that I wasn't preparing a wedding, I put my plan into motion. Dinner with Craig, a college friend who works on the state medical board. I casually mentioned my concern about a doctor with possible prescription irregularities. I asked what the process would be to file an anonymous complaint. He explained that those involving controlled substances are thoroughly investigated and gave me instructions to do it formally, warning me not to file unfounded complaints. Meeting with Stephanie at a restaurant. At first she was reluctant, but ended up confessing that Dorian had been discovered with a stash of oxycodone without prescription. He claimed they were for an old sports injury, but the quantity exceeded normal. Additionally, she noticed strange behaviors. He would disappear for half an hour at work and return with constricted pupils, a classic sign of someone under the effect of opioids. I wanted her to sign a statement, but she refused. Her career was at stake. However, she hinted that if someone else pressed in the right place, no one would bother her. The revenge plan is getting masterful. Are you Team Victor? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss how this story ends. Hit that notification bell. More informal meetings with Clara. Her messages about Andrea's failed relationship with Dorian were constant. She told me Dorian was organizing a big housewarming party at the $1.2 million mansion where Andrea had moved in the most exclusive area of the city. He wants everyone to admire his perfect life, Clara told me. His father planned to attend along with hospital executives. His mother, on the other hand, didn't accept anything he did. Information from Joseph, my hospital contact. Dorian was going to perform a high-profile surgery the day after the party. A senator's daughter with guaranteed media coverage. It's the perfect moment for him, he wrote me. Filing the complaint. The night before the party, I submitted an anonymous report to the medical board detailing dates and discrepancies between medication inventory and usage records. I provided data verified by Joseph, sufficient to trigger an investigation. Alliance with a hospital security guard. I paid him $200 to notify me of any strange behavior from Dorian during his shifts. The following week, I didn't attend the party, but Clara sent me photos live. Andrea splendid in a designer dress. Dorian exercising his authority before colleagues. Andrea's father rubbing elbows with executives. Everything looked impeccable, expensive, and very haughty. Just the perfect image of someone about to crash. On Monday, Dorian carried out the intervention without incidents. What no one expected was that morning the hospital ordered a random substance test for all surgical personnel. According to my informant, that mysterious policy only affected Dorian's team. On Tuesday, I received the message. Dr. Chamberlain has been summoned to an emergency meeting with administration. He left there with a furrowed brow. On Friday, Joseph informed me that Dorian had stopped attending the hospital. Rumors of suspension while accusations were being investigated. Patience had worked. Now, following Tuesday, Clara called me in a panic. "Victor, everything is falling apart. Dorian's license was suspended for substance issues, and Andrea is on the verge of a nervous breakdown." I replied with a calm voice. "That's unfortunate. How is she handling it?" "She's in denial," Clara said. "She insists it's a mistake, that someone is sabotaging him." She paused and finished. "Also, she found out about his ex-fiancés, plural. There were 3, not 2. It seems she was living a complete awakening, and the worst hadn't arrived yet. Tomorrow, the hospital board meets to decide whether to terminate his contract. With the suspension and ongoing investigation, his medical liability insurance conditioned coverage on him maintaining employment. If they fire him, they cancel the policy. If he loses his position, he loses everything. It's over. Meanwhile, Andrea only appears on the lease contract of his apartment, but not on any joint bank account. He bet everything on that relationship, even used his savings to furnish the house. I almost feel sorry, but only almost. 2 days later, everything fell fell apart. They fired Dorian. The medical board investigation advanced, and according to Clara, he fell into a self-destructive spiral. He blamed Andrea for his disgrace, drank uncontrollably, and became verbally aggressive. She now sees the truth, but she's trapped. Clara confessed to me at a cafe. She's afraid to leave. She has nowhere to go. Her father offered to help her, but Andrea, out of pride, rejected the offer. I nodded with an understanding air, although inside I couldn't help thinking, karma is ruthless. That same night, around 2 in the morning, my doorbell rang insistently. Thanks to the new cameras, I saw Dorian staggering on the porch, intoxicated and shouting incoherently. I didn't respond. I calmly called the authorities, recorded the entire sequence, and the next day filed the complaint. 3 days later, the mailbox appeared destroyed. The next day, I noticed one tire on my truck was slowly losing air. I didn't react at the moment. I reinforced my security system, installed more cameras, and documented each incident in detail. That night, at 9, the doorbell rang again. No one was expecting me. Upon checking the cameras, I saw Andrea with smudged makeup. I opened the intercom. "What do you want?" "Victor, please. I need to talk to you. Just 5 minutes." Against my instinct, I barely opened the door, blocking access. Andrea was destroyed. She confessed that Dorian wasn't who he claimed to be. He had deceived her about everything: his finances, his past, and even his supposed health problems. With a broken voice, she said, "It was the worst mistake of my life. I had stability, honesty, and true love, and I threw it away for a fantasy that crumbled in months. Now Dorian could lose his license. The condo will go to auction. He's in debt up to his neck. He drinks daily, and last night, he pushed me against the wall. I suggested she call the authorities. No, my ex. I have nowhere to go," she sobbed. "My parents are out of town, and Clara's house is too small. I just need a couple of days." I laughed without being able to help it. "Are you kidding? You want to stay here after everything that happened? I know I don't deserve your help, but you're the only one who's been there," she replied. "You, the person I loved, wouldn't have left a cowardly note in a birthday gift, or would have taken family heirlooms out of spite, or would have moved in with someone else without thinking. Dorian manipulated my decisions. Now I must accept consequences." My face hardened upon hearing that familiar rage. "So, you're going to leave me homeless after 4 years together? How ironic." Her voice trembled as she added, "By the way, how's Dorian's career going? They say it's going badly." She remained silent, understanding that I knew the truth. "I reported him," I admitted, shrugging. "Someone had to prevent an incapacitated doctor from continuing to operate. People see it as a public service." "You ruined his life and career," she reproached me. "Not his addictions. You took away everything we had." I approached and lowered my voice. "Believe me, there was more than one person harmed." Clara passed me details, and Nurse Stephanie too. Nobody likes feeling used and discarded. The next day, Dorian appeared again, this time at 11 in the morning, staggering and banging on my door. I didn't even bother opening. I called the authorities and watched as they took him away for trespassing and public intoxication. I added the video to my file. A while later, Andrea sent her father to negotiate. Thomas Whitfield stood uncomfortably on my porch and began with good manners. "Victor, there have been unfortunate events with Dorian. Andrea is in a vulnerable position. I'm concerned for her safety. We could reach an agreement, a temporary truce." I raised an eyebrow. He proposed that she could stay at my house until the situation cleared up, or find another place. I replied coldly, "Shelter my ex, the same one who took my family watches and half the apartment without contributing anything." Thomas lowered his gaze, embarrassed. I know what I'm about to say sounds strange, almost delusional, but it was real. Thomas Whitfield, Andrea's father, made me a direct proposal. "I'm willing to compensate you. Let's say $20,000 if you allow Andrea to use your guest room for 1 or 2 months without commitments." I stared at him, incredulous. "You're trying to buy me to clean up your daughter's mess." "I'm trying to protect her," he replied without flinching. And where was that concern when she was ruining my life? When she moved in with a man who was still legally married when she met him? I asked how he knew Dorian hadn't yet separated from his second wife when he started dating Andrea. "I did my homework," he admitted seriously, "just as I investigated his prescription habits and malpractice complaints." Thomas stayed quiet for a good while. "What do you want, Victor?" "Nothing from you or Andrea," I replied. "I just want to be left alone to rebuild my life, the same one your daughter destroyed." As he was leaving, I threw one last phrase at him. "In case it helps, Clara tried to warn you several times. Maybe you should start listening to your younger daughter. She seems to be the only one in that family with a true moral sense." The following weeks were a parade of desperate contact attempts. Andrea sent audios full of crying, while Dorian, when he was sober enough, sent messages that I simply documented and forwarded to his lawyer. Thomas even tried to tempt me again, increasing his offer to $50,000. I rejected all his proposals. Finally, everyone understood I wasn't going to agree. Andrea returned to her parents' house humiliated. Dorian, for his part, faced criminal charges for prescription fraud, in addition to having lost his license and, according to reports, had left the city. The perfect couple spectacularly crumbled, leaving only ruins in their wake. Andrea, who previously filled social media with photos of her perfect life and dream relationship, began posting vague phrases about forgiveness and new beginnings. According to Clara, her old hospital friends stopped interacting with her posts. The comment sections, which used to be full of fire emojis and perfect couple praise, became silent. Andrea ended up sleeping at different acquaintances' houses, wearing out each welcome with her constant need for attention and drama until she had no choice but to return to the family home. Her hospital colleagues stopped answering her calls. The pharmaceutical company where she worked put her on administrative leave as soon as Dorian's scandal publicly exploded. They couldn't afford to have a sales representative linked, even indirectly, to a prescription fraud case. For someone whose identity revolved completely around status and image, it was a definitive fall. Me? I kept the house. I finally adopted the dog I always wanted, a rescued mixed Labrador I named Cooper. I went back to playing basketball with Joseph. I improved my old Tacoma by installing a new sound system and wheels. Max, the cat, ended up accepting Cooper, and between the three of us, we formed a comfortable bachelor routine. Sometimes I go out for coffee with Clara. She is in every way everything Andrea never was. And for me, that's the highest compliment possible. I sold the engagement ring, and little by little I understood that sometimes the best revenge isn't seeing someone suffer, but observing how they realize they're no longer part of your life. 6 months have passed. Life has strange ways of settling down. Today, as I write this, Cooper sleeps snoring at my feet and Max watches from the armrest of my father's old recliner. I made the best possible decisions. I chose to surround myself with those who don't value how much I earn or the car I drive. At work, things are going well too. They promoted me to project leader last month, the result of long hours of effort after the breakup. Regarding Andrea and Dorian, the fall was even more satisfying than I imagined. Dorian not only definitively lost his license after it was discovered he was using other doctors' registration numbers to issue illegal prescriptions, but he also faces criminal charges. According to Joseph, he declared bankruptcy and returned defeated to his hometown in Ohio. The $1.2 million mansion was foreclosed and his Maserati seized in the hospital parking lot, a moment that became legendary in the halls of that place. Andrea, for her part, tried to save her pharmaceutical sales career, but her reputation was destroyed. It's not easy to sell medications when your partner is known for losing his license due to substance problems. She ended up accepting a sales position at a much smaller company with a much lower salary. Last week I saw her at a traffic light. She was driving her father's old Honda while I passed in my freshly detailed Tacoma with new tires. Our eyes crossed for barely a second. I made no gesture, just continued on my way. I think that indifference hit her harder than any insult I could have thrown at her. As for Thomas, he also suffered the consequences. Apparently, photos at the cabin were leaked. It wasn't me, I swear. That unleashed his wife's fury. Dorian had been a family friend, and Thomas covering everything up was an unforgivable betrayal. According to Clara, the family fight was epic and Thomas ended up sleeping in his office for a month. Meanwhile, the coffee meetings with Clara evolved into dinners. We're taking it cautiously, both marked by our experiences. However, there's something real between us that I never had with Andrea. Andrea found out about our relationship 3 weeks ago. Passing by her parents' house, she saw us having dinner together. The outburst was of mythical proportions, screaming, accusations of betrayal, dramatic scenes. Clara, always serene, cut her off with 5 words that still resonate in my memory. Not everything revolves around you. I never felt more proud of someone.